What's up, everyone? It's Brian from the Exact IT Cybersecurity YouTube channel. Welcome to another video where we help educate you about things around cybersecurity and what you can start doing to protect yourself. Today's video, we're going to get into a report released by CISA, the federal government's cybersecurity wing, on protecting our future, partnering to safeguard K-12 organizations from cybersecurity threats. Now, I did a video a while back on this channel about cybersecurity threats against K-12 schools and colleges because they are a big, massive target and they are large victims for these cyber criminals who routinely target these organizations, K-12 schools, successfully and hit them with ransomware. We've seen it with the largest school district in the United States, or the second largest, which was the LA County School District. And we've seen it in a lot of other districts and smaller schools around the country. And schools are in a little bit of a jam right now because, and I said it back then too, because the funding just isn't there and the priority isn't there. So CISA has been tasked to release a report around basically why these schools are getting attacked and what they can start doing to protect themselves. So I'm going to cover a lot of what's in this report today. I will link to the report down below in the description so you can check it out for yourself. This report came out on January 24th, 2023, and that's actually when I'm recording this video. And I've gone through the report myself and want to bring you some important highlights. So the first thing is that they are asking schools to look at things from a budgetary standpoint. And what that means is that they're asking principals and leaders of K-12 organizations, superintendents, and IT people, IT directors at schools to look at how to protect these schools in this manner. So they've given you basically three different areas. They're calling it first, second, and third. And there's a lot of things in the first section that they are asking you to do. And then the second and third sections are more comprehensive, less tactical objectives that K-12 schools can achieve around their cybersecurity resiliency and their posture. So let's get into that first section real quick, and then we'll talk about sections 2 and 3. But they are saying that schools should first implement multi-factor authentication everywhere. That's pretty straightforward. That's recommendations that I've given on this channel and on my podcast, Security Squawk. You can check us out on YouTube. Multi-factor authentication is a major player right now in how you can stop cyber criminals and how you can stop ransomware. It requires you to have two forms of a password and another device like your phone or a key or a fob that has a code that you type in, but it requires you basically to say that you have something in your possession that allows you to gain access to whatever it is you're gaining access to. And you want to make sure you're putting multi-factor authentication in as many places as humanly possible. Definitely want to secure that email with multi-factor authentication and any sensitive systems that you might have that contain information about students, information about student records, parents, things like that. Second thing that they're telling you that you need to do at K-12 schools is prioritize patch management, making sure that your systems are being updated and you're not using legacy systems that are no longer supported by software developers and manufacturers. You also want to make sure that you're performing test backups and test restores. And this means that somebody's actually physically doing this and recovering your backups in a way that it's similar or very close to how you would do it if you really had a problem. We run into a lot of companies or a lot of MSPs or a lot of IT companies that try to justify this by saying that, oh yeah, we have a software, we have a system, or we bought some technology that does this for us automatically. Well, that's great. That gives you kind of a clue in maybe, that your daily backups are okay and they're not corrupted. But that's not what we're talking about here. You actually have to have a physical restore process and have somebody test this stuff and verify that it actually does work, and it will work when you do need it. And far too many times when we're involved in some kind of incident response event that we see the IT department or the MSP saying that, well, we have this tool and this tool does it, and they rely solely on that, and that's just not good enough. And you want to make sure that you have a process and that you have somebody who is accountable if these things do not work when you need them. The fourth thing that they're recommending that you do is minimize exposure to common attacks. So that's a lot. That's pretty broad. And what are common attacks? So consult with cybersecurity people, and these common attacks change all the time. What was common 2 years ago is not necessarily common today. And there's new common threats being used by cyber criminals at all times. So you really want to make sure that somebody in your organization is responsible for what we call threat intelligence, and that's how you're going to know what these common attacks are, and then on top of it, you're gonna know how to mitigate it and how to deal with these issues before they become a problem. So having someone responsible for gaining threat intelligence for your organization is very important. You can have somebody internally do that, or you can outsource it. Number 5 is develop and exercise a cyber incident response plan. And this is pretty important. It's also pretty broad. It's easier said than done. This is something that's going to take organizations a pretty good deal of time to actually come to fruition, to where it's mature enough to where you could actually feel comfortable with that incident response plan. But you need to start somewhere. We see a lot of organizations that don't do this at all, and then it becomes a problem for them when they actually have an event because communication's lacking, nobody knows what to do, nobody really takes charge of the situation, which further delays recovery times, and even the chances of recovery go down when you don't practice incident response. Schools are very familiar with incident response. They do fire drills and other types of safety drills in schools today, and this should be something that they add to their repertoire of planning and making sure that the school is ready for events like cyber attacks. Number 6, and the last one in the first section here, is create a training and awareness campaign at all levels. All levels meaning staff and students and parents and anyone that could potentially be in the school or have access to school resources. So you have to think about who these people are. You're also going to want to consider vendors and partners as part of your security and awareness training program. We've seen security and awareness training programs evolve over time. It used to be just get some information to your employees, but K through 12 schools are unique in that they have a lot of different people, including students, including potentially parents and other partners and vendors who have access to the network or who can get on the network, and you want to evaluate what access they have and make sure that they're being properly trained and instructed on acceptable use and how to handle certain things if they come up, like if they get a phishing email or if they click on something that they shouldn't have. What's the procedure? What's the process for reporting that? And this is something you should be going over with all levels in your K through 12 organization. So that was the first area. These are kind of like what the CISA is considering the quick hitter areas of that have a lot of impact for schools if they do these things. And then you go into the second and third levels that CISA is recommending for schools in this report. And we have the second is prioritize further near-term investments in alignment with the full list of CISA's cyber security performance goals. So in this report, they've listed cybersecurity performance goals. And again, I'm not going to go into that in this video, I'm just here trying to highlight some important things that school district leaders can use to help improve their cybersecurity. But definitely download this report and start to understand what that means. It really does model what we follow at my company, Exact IT and Cybersecurity, which is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. It starts making sure that you're following a framework and that you are measuring whether or not you're in alignment with that framework. So moving on to the third area that CISA recommends for K through 12 schools, we have develop a unique cybersecurity plan that leverages the NIST cybersecurity framework, which I just mentioned. So it's taking it a step further. When we consult with companies, we usually tell them that achieving the NIST cybersecurity framework, if you're really starting from nothing, can typically take anywhere from 24 to 36 months or longer, depending on the size of your organization and where you're at today with your cybersecurity maturity. So schools need to adopt that third section of following that framework, but realistically, CISA knows it's going to take a long period of time to implement this. And if you're not thinking about it yet, now's a good time to start thinking about it. But in the meantime, make sure you're doing the first section and then go to the second section, because these will be achievable and easier things to accomplish for schools. So this report that I'm linking to down below is principally intended for leaders in the K through 12 community, including superintendents, district and school administrators, school boards, and state policymakers. The report may also be useful for education and technology leaders, including cybersecurity, IT staff, federal agencies, non-federal cybersecurity entities, nonprofits, and private sector organizations supporting the K through 12 community. It's intended to raise awareness of the K through 12 community's growing cyber risk and threat landscape and catalyze action across the K through 12 community. And there's some key findings in this report that I want to highlight as I wrap up, and I'll share some other thoughts with you as I wrap up this video. But there's other key findings here. Number one being, in an environment of limited resources, leaders should leverage security investments to focus on the most impactful steps. So that's why they kind of broke it up into this 1, 2, 3, and one has very tactical things that you can knock out. K through 12 entities should begin with a small number of prioritized investments, deploying multi-factor authentication, mitigating known exploited vulnerabilities, implementing and testing backups, regularly exercising an incident response plan, and implementing a strong cybersecurity training program. K through 12 entities should then progress to fully adopting CISA's cybersecurity performance goals and mature to building an enterprise security plan aligned around the NIST cybersecurity framework. And then the second key finding out of this report is cybersecurity risk management must be elevated as a top priority for administrators, superintendents, and other leaders at every K through 12 institution. Leaders must take creative approaches to securing necessary resources, including leveraging available grant programs, working with technology providers to benefit from low-cost services and products that are secure by design and default, and urgently reducing the security burden by migrating to secure cloud environments and trusted managed services. Wow, that's a mouthful. So essentially they're saying that, we know the funding's not there. There is some grant programs available through the federal government that you could possibly apply for. But I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can make this happen towards the end of the video with some thoughts that I want to share with K through 12 leaders. And then, yes, working with trusted managed service providers. Number one, managed service providers and IT companies and IT people, I don't care what designation they have behind their company or behind their name. I talk to people all the time who say, oh, my guy is great because he's a doctor in cybersecurity, or he has a CISSP, or this company has a SOC 2 certification. That's all well and good. that's like kind of permission to play. If we look at it as like all these entities have professional designations or certifications behind their name, that's the same thing as saying like these are all professional baseball players, but not all professional baseball players are Derek Jeter, and not all professional baseball players or professional athletes, really, some of them don't deserve to be at the level of professional sports. And that's how you have to look at it. The talent gap or the talent disparity is very diverse through IT, and you really need to understand and know who you're working with, and transparency is the number one thing that I can say is key with selecting and continuing to work with a particular security vendor or IT vendor. If they're not being proactive and they're not coming to you with lots of information and lots of reports, I'm going to say that that's a huge red flag for you, that you might want to look into your provider as to why they're not being forthright with this information and bringing it to you on a regular basis. And if they're not willing or able to, then you might want to look at switching providers or finding a provider who is capable of providing you with, say, monthly reports on where you're at with cybersecurity. And this is a thing that has to happen. It can't be just a once a year or once a quarter thing. Somebody should be reviewing this on a regular basis. And I would also highly recommend that the person that's evaluating the network from a security standpoint is not the person who's responsible for it. You don't want somebody checking their own work. We don't allow students to grade their own tests, so you shouldn't be allowing your IT person or your IT company to do their own cybersecurity auditing in your school. The other thing is that you want to make sure that you get rid of things like Exchange servers. If you're running local email servers and stuff like that, cloud services today are way more secure. They're better options. They're less demanding and on your resources to run these things in the cloud versus how we traditionally did them on servers in the network. So schools need to look at all these things and start investing and improving on their infrastructure so they don't have more risk when it comes to cybersecurity in their K through 12 school. The third thing that CISA points out here in the report is no K through 12 institution is an island. Information sharing and collaboration with peers and partners is essential to build awareness and sustain resilience. K through 12 entities should participate in an information sharing forum such as the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, otherwise known as MSISAC, and or the K-12 Security Information Exchange, it's called K-12-6, and establish a relationship with CISA and FBI field personnel in your area, which is great advice. Get involved. Security is always a team sport. Don't try to do this within your own district on your own. Partner with other districts around you in your area to share information, to get experts to come in and talk to your staff, to talk to your superintendents, to talk to your principals, to even talk to your students, because your students play a big role in whether your network and information is secure and whether they're learning secure hygiene and secure behavior habits at a very young age. If we can teach these things like using a password manager, putting multi-factor authentication on things to kids at a very young age, when they get into their teen and adult years and they start, establishing their own accounts, they're going to be more aware and they're going to be able to keep themselves secure from scammers and hackers, ruining their lives and creating havoc. So this report does also talk about something that I am very concerned about, which is school funding for cybersecurity. And how do we get there, right? How do we do this? Yes, you can work with companies like ours at Exact Cybersecurity, and we'll work with K through 12 schools on trying to find the most cost-effective ways to get things done. But there's only so much you can cut. These tools cost money. The talent is very short, and cybersecurity professionals are quite expensive today. And I don't see that really changing in the near future. The tool prices may come down a little bit as more tools are developed and more competition comes on the market. But as far as the talent goes, that's always going to be a struggle, and it's going to be really hard for schools to hire their own cybersecurity experts, which is why they're going to want to leverage a service or a fractional type of chief information security officer or something like that. But the biggest thing is we really need to educate our lawmakers on what the problem is and what the schools need. And the schools need to play their part by educating the lawmakers on what funding is needed for this. Cybersecurity professionals and experts like myself can educate lawmakers on why this stuff is needed and what the proper approach is. And this report that was put out by CISA also puts us in the right direction of having lawmakers being able to access something like this report and start to understand the gravity of the situation. So some of the findings under recommendations, it says with finite resources, K through 12 institutions can take a small number of steps to significantly reduce cybersecurity risk. And then we are talking about making sure that we can pay for these and working with state and local cybersecurity grant programs, utilizing free or low-cost services to make near-term improvements, and expect and call for technology providers to enable strong security controls by default for no additional charge. That's an interesting line there by CISA, is that you're requiring these technology providers to do this. And I can say that depending on how your contract's written, you may or may not be able to get away with that. I've seen some really weak managed service provider contracts out there where you can probably get away with that, but I've also seen some really strong ones where you would never be able to get away with that because they're so well defined as to what's covered and what's not covered. Minimize the burden of security by migrating IT services to the cloud, which are more secure and require less resources. And then no K-12 entity can single-handedly identify and prioritize emerging threats and vulnerabilities and risks. That's why you should make sure you have relationships with CISA, make sure you have relationships with FBI, and make sure somebody at your organization is receiving threat intelligence so you're fully aware of how cyber criminals are trying to, and what cyber criminals, which groups are trying to target K through 12 schools. Guys, if you have any questions, if you made it this far in the video, please like the video and give us a subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Share this video with your friends and colleagues. Again, the resources I mentioned in this video are down below. And if you have any questions, there's links in the description where you can reach out to me, or feel free to drop them here in the YouTube comments. But reach out to me if you have any questions or issues with this. And I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.